Hey, all you mentees, Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, and join me today for an advanced look at the Doctor Strange Omnibus Volume 2 from Marvel Comics, so stay tuned. Before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. Now, this is where it gets interesting because of the distribution centers and the book market and direct market. I don't know what's going on exactly and if they're not talking to each other, but apparently this book, this is Volume 2 of Doctor Strange, has been out at Amazon for the last couple of weeks. Now, that's the book market. But it doesn't officially come out in the book market until January 25th. So that's only the standard edition cover. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is this. This is the direct market cover. On your left-hand side is the standard edition cover. So that standard edition cover by Kevin Nolan is the one that's been available at places like Amazon for the last couple of weeks and officially comes out on January 25th. And this here, the direct market cover, comes out on February 15th. So there's a little bit of a gap in between the two different covers. But the book inside is exactly the same. But I did want to point out that the standard edition is already available. Meanwhile, the direct market, you have to wait until February 15th. That's the latest date that I have. So this is the cover, Hell the Master, and there's Strange right there. We'll talk about why they changed his costume. And here is what the spine looks like. And even though I already did this, just wanted to again remind you what the spines look like together with Doctor Strange, the new printing of Omnibus Volume 1. And then the back of the book, highlighting all the covers from the issues collected in this collection. The book retails for $100. Now, under the dust jacket, we have something very similar to that of Doctor Strange Omnibus Volume 1, the logo here. A different picture here on the spine of Doctor Strange, the credits, and of course Volume 2, and then the Eye of Agamotto. So, let's get this book open, look at the artwork, talk about some of the stories collected in here, and the differences between this and Volume 1. We are entering a brand new era of Doctor Strange, with some familiar creators, and some familiar supporting cast and villains. So here we have Doctor Strange, a Gene Colan piece here, and all the credits, the writers, the pencilers, the inkers, letters. The colors uncredited again because they weren't crediting colors at the time, but I will say that Tom Palmer was doing a lot of the colors whenever he was inking Gene Colan's art. At least that's what I remember. And your table of contents. Now, it's interesting because this doesn't kick off with an introduction or forward by Stan Lee like we've seen in the previous collection, because what they do is they collect the Marvel Masterworks forwards. But Marvel Masterworks Volumes 1 and 2 had an introduction by Stan Lee because Volume 2 of the Marvel Masterworks had the last of Steve Ditko stuff and the beginning of Bill Everett's run. So, kicking it off with issue 147, continuing Strange Tales. Doctor Strange, still not popular enough to have his own comic book. He's still sharing it with Nick Fury and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So this does collect material from Strange Tales 147 to 168, Marvel Feature number 1, Not Brand X number 13. And then the title officially changes. Doctor Strange gets his own comic book, much like Captain America and Iron Man. It becomes Doctor Strange in issue 169 of Strange Tales. And it's nothing but Doctor Strange. So this collects Doctor Strange 169 to 183 when sadly the magazine was canceled. Avengers number 61, Submariner 22, Incredible Hulk 126, which leads into the Defenders. So the very first thing you're going to see here is, of course, the lack of Ditko artwork. You're going to see this gentleman here, Bill Everett, who of course was known for creating Namor, the Submariner. So he now comes in with his art style, and I will say, man, this is some very polished and clean artwork. There's a lot of details in his art, but it's just so different than Steve Ditko's art. And there's nothing wrong with that. And something I will say that you're going to hear by anybody that's already read this run, or people that were collecting these when they were coming out, is that this is subpar compared to Volume 1. But that's a really unfair statement, because how do you go here? I'm going to skip a little bit. How do you go from Steve Ditko, right? Like, how do you move on from that? This guy that had this trippy artwork for creating different dimensions and establish who the character of Doctor Strange is. Well, you go with somebody like, I think they did the right thing. They asked Bill to come in, and his artwork is just so clean, so polished. It's so different that I think, you know, they needed to put a different look on Doctor Strange. Now, a different look is still going to come, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, you know, for the most part, it's still, I mean, it's still Steve Ditko Strange the way that he looks. He just looks a little more polished. We have the introduction of Dormammu's sister here, Umar. And it's just one villain after another, dimension hopping. Doctor Strange hardly has any time to spend on Earth. We still have the return of Dormammu and Baron Mordo causing havoc. And then we have another artist step in, and that is Marie Severin. And Marie Severin, her art at first is a little bit rough. But, I mean, this is the legendary Marie Severin. Once she gets a couple of issues in, she starts getting accustomed to the character and drawing him. By now you have Stan Lee writing some of the stories, and then he takes a step back and Roy Thomas kind of steps in. And it's interesting because Roy Thomas has an introduction in here talking about how much he disliked the character of Doctor Strange and how he just wasn't excited about writing his stories, because this guy just always figured out to do a magic trick to get out of trouble. So it's interesting to see him just fall in love with the character. And as you're reading this, it's when Gene Colan steps in that you're like, oh my gosh. The way that Roy Thomas is writing about Doctor Strange is a lot different than the way that he started. I thought that was really cool. You also have Dennis O'Neil and then Jim Lawrence step in to do some of the writing. The first appearance of the Living Tribunal here. And from Marie Severin, then you get to a gentleman named Dan Atkins, who becomes an ongoing artist on the book. And I'm not gonna get into this whole debate as if he was, you know, one of the earliest swipers, art swipers, that is. But there were a few times that I was reading this, because this is my first time reading a lot of these stories in here, that I noticed, like, hey, I've seen that before. Like, that's some of Steve Ditko's backgrounds, but it's really interesting because this is the first time I've ever read in a forward where Roy Thomas acknowledges that, yeah, he was a art swiper, but he was damn good at his job, and he was fast. So I thought that was an interesting forward. I mean, and that's where he leaves it at, and that's where I'm going to leave it at. Other people can discuss, you know, like, the morality of all that. But it's been there for a long time. Art inspired by art, and art being borrowed. I mean, one of my favorite comic book artists, Don Rosa, started tracing Carl Barks ducks for some of his comics when they were being published. So, just saying, for all the people that are like, oh, Greg Land is such a swiper, it's been a part of comics for a long time. Now, after Dan Atkins leaves the book, now, by the way, I'm going to say something, like, Dan Atkins did leave a huge legacy behind. Like, you know, he was one of the biggest inspirations and mentors for people like P. Craig Russell, or all these people that went over to Conan the Barbarian. I think this is one of the ones that I was like, wait a minute, that's the MD cover there from EC Comics. So this is issue 169 of Doctor Strange. This is when he got his full title. It was just him. He didn't have to share it with the Human Torch. He didn't have to share it with Nick Fury, and it was just him. So what Roy Thomas does in this particular issue, along with Dan Atkins, is retell the origin. Remember that 8-page origin issue that Steve Ditko and Stan Lee did in the pages of Strange Tales in Volume 1 of the Omnibus? They do it and expand on it. They make him more of a tortured soul. We now have a more precise location around the Himalayas where he finds the Ancient One. And then we have, after Dan Atkins decides to become an inker and step away from the book, we have Tom Palmer step in. And Tom Palmer, I'm sure a lot of you know him as an inker, but he was doing the pencils for this third issue, I guess, of Doctor Strange, until we got this machine right here. Now, this is when I was blown away by how amazing Gene Colan is. Like, I've been a fan of Gene Colan since Tomb of Dracula, and I will admit, it wasn't until my 30s that I got big into his artwork, that I learned to appreciate the freaking art style, the panel layouts, the spread pages, the positioning of the bodies, the painted look to his art. I think Roy Thomas describes it best. He says it's called painting by pencil. That's the way to describe Gene Colan's artwork. So Tom Palmer steps down as the writer, or I'm sorry, not writer, the penciler, and becomes the inker for Gene Colan, and then also does the colors. So there's some amazing artwork, and this, for the first time, feels like a different type of book than all of this. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with all this stuff here. Marie Severin, Bill Everett, Dan Atkins. But when you get to this, you're like, oh, this is when they're trying something new. And they were, because unfortunately the sales of Doctor Strange, even when he got his own magazine, weren't that great. Not when compared to Spider-Man or Avengers or hell, even the X-Men. But they were trying. And they were trying new things. They were bringing back characters like Clea. You see Doctor Strange actually become a little more human and go on dates with Clea, like walking around with her, having a snowball fight with her. No, that's a little more dramatic than what it really was. But it's just absolutely gorgeous. You have the return of another character that appeared during the Steve Ditko and Stan Lee run, Victoria Bentley. And she comes and plays a bigger role in Doctor Strange's life. And then he himself changes because of the demand of superheroes in comics, of masked heroes in comics. So what Gene Colan and Roy Thomas and Tom Palmer decide to do with the character is in issue 177, right here, they decide to give him a mask and change his costume up. So maybe they could grab other readers of other comic books that, you know, like, hey, wait a minute, this guy looks pretty cool. Who's this guy? He doesn't look like an old dude wearing a cape. I think probably most kids were describing Doctor Strange like an old dude wearing a cape. But anyway, you know, here we have Strange, or Doctor Strange, and the whole story is really fun, the way that they decide to do it and how he becomes his own entity. But you can find out yourself. I'm not going to spoil exactly how that happens. But I thought it was a really cool way of, you know, trying to get people to buy this comic. There's even a crossover with Avengers. This is such a cool, right here. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. That's awesome. Those are nice splash pages by Big John Buscema there. What was his name? Asmodeus, I think. There's Strange looking all... I really dug this costume. The Fight with Eternity. This is awesome because we were just talking about art swipe, but they had to do an art swipe for this because the cover got lost in the mail and it didn't show up until months later, and it's part of the extras here. So they took like a Steve Ditko picture. That's a real photograph of New York City, and then of course just a picture of Gene Colan's Doctor Strange in an action pose that they got from another comic. But this, man, these issues were just so awesome, and it's so sad that the magazine still didn't sell that well. That, unfortunately, this issue right here, 183, that ends on a cliffhanger, becomes the final issue for Doctor Strange. It gets canceled, but Roy Thomas was writing another comic at the time called The Submariner. So a couple months later, he took the story and put it into the Submariner plot to wrap up that story. And then that led into another comic that he was writing at the time, The Incredible Hulk, right here, number 126, with Herb Trimpe doing the artwork. And that wraps up the story, which eventually will lead into this title right here. Now, all of the Marvel Feature Presents is not in here. Just pretty much the story called The Return, which has artwork in here by Don Heck. And this is just showcasing how, you know, because Doctor Strange doesn't have his own comic book anymore, we don't really need that mask on him. So this is how he decides to wrap up that particular story between Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange. What was he going as? Doctor Strange Sanders at the time, so he can have like a human identity, kind of like Peter Parker or Clark Kent. Now, as far as the extras in the back, there's not Brand Eck. Hey, dead man. Here are some unused art pages here from Tom Palmer and Gene Colan. Original art from Gene Colan. Absolutely stunning here. The cover that was lost in the mail right here. This is what it was supposed to be like. So you have Eternity and Nightmare there. And then the production covers here. And then the cover to the Omnibus, this is the standard edition cover by Kevin Nolan. I do find it interesting that all these characters appeared through here, like Clea and Wong and the Ancient One, Dormammu, Nightmare, and Baron Mordo, but Shuma Gorath doesn't appear until, what was it, Marvel Premiere number 10. And man, you get to see Gene Colan draw the Black Knight. I don't know. I'm not saying this is just as good or better than the Volume 1 Omnibus, but damn, this was still good. Maybe going into this with all these ideas that this was going to suck, it wasn't going to be as good as the Volume 1, but then you hear the same thing about Fantastic Four, that after Jack Kirby, it drops in quality. But I think going in with that mentality does help enjoy the story a little bit more. Now, this was printed at the Donnelly printer, and as far as the binding, it's sewn binding. Here's what the eye looks like, and I'm sure as I was flipping through here, you were noticing not just the splash pages, but the way the book lays over with the spread pages. Man, that is so badass. I mean, come on. That is so beautiful. Gene Colan. Man, I have grown to love that guy more and more, his artwork. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Again, this is the direct market copy, which comes out in February. And in January, we already have the standard edition copy. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the comments down below. If you've ever read this, let me know what you think of the stories, what you thought of Bill Everett, Marie Severin, Dan Atkins, and Gene Colan as the new artist on Doctor Strange. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any more questions, leave your questions down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and on Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, all of you, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.